one of the biggest things that we have in this trade, and we spent that whole time talking to Royce about Russell Westbrook, we did not mention Chris Paul at all, guys. So when you have, like, Chris Paul is the other guy going in this trade, and we had talked about him before as one of the toughest guys one of the toughest contracts to move because he had so much remaining on that deal, but also where he was physically. The Thunder's not in a place where they're trying to rebuild around Chris Paul.
Hell no. Hell no, Ramona. They've got to get him out of there and add to their treasure trove of assets in a moment. But we saw that graphic. Look at all the stuff that Houston had to add on to make sure that that contract disappeared. If you're the Thunder, you make the next best deal you can, get Paul out of there, continue to hit the reset button. But it shows where he's at in his career and his feeling around the league, because this is not the Chris Paul that we all grew up with and the guy that everybody loved for so long. This is a completely different player with an awful contract. And if you're the Thunder, you have to do whatever you can in the moment to go forward without him.
And they can't move him until December 15th. So he's going to spend a couple months there and return to the place where he played games as a member of the Hornets back in the day. He's going to do some mentoring for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And then come December 15th, they're going to be calling up Miami, calling up Detroit, calling up Minnesota. The same teams that are interested in Russell Westbrook are interested in Chris Paul.
Well, I think this highlights who had the leverage in this deal. So Russ gets his preferred destination. Chris Paul, there was talks of sending him to Miami in a three-way deal. Miami, though, was interested only in Russell Westbrook at that point. And the Thunder felt like, we want to accommodate Russell Westbrook and where he wants to go. Chris Paul then ends up in Oklahoma City where, yeah, Dave, you said he began his career, but this is not exactly the situation he wants to be in at this stage.
Oh, certainly not. I mean, he is in a stage of his career where he went to Houston trying to get that ring. Thunder are so far away from a ring right now. I mean, they were close in 2012.
Right.
They're back in the dark ages in terms of starting up this process again. They're going to use all those draft picks to slowly build up a contender. And so they will do right by him. I know, right? They will do right by him. But they can't do right by him until December 15th. So he's going to be...
Just a clarification. I think he can be traded before because they didn't take back any assets in this trade. So you don't have to necessarily wait on that.
Okay.
And my understanding is that Sam Presti is already in discussions with Leon Rose and Stephen Heumann, who are Chris Paul's agents, to figure out this situation on Chris. And if, he's a bit in purgatory, right? He can show up and pass the physical and show up and be a good leader around that team. But if he doesn't want to be there long term, they have to look to move him, which is as hard for them to move as it was for the Rockets, who spent all summer trying to do that. I mean, Dave, what would you do with Chris Paul if you were the Thunder? He's set to make $124 million over the next 3 years and maybe not wanting to be there.
Right. We talked a little bit about on the last segment. You want to move on from him, and I want to clarify what I said before. We talked about it in the break. December 15th would be the date if they were to trade for contracts that were signed this summer. So they could trade him to another team and for players that were already on the books prior to this summer. So perhaps that could be a framework of a deal involving Olynyk and Winslow and Dragic in Miami, for example. You move on from him because you owe it to him in his standing in the game to go get a chance to compete, not be a part of a rebuild.
Do you owe it to him, though? Because it's his standing in the game, but he has no equity in Oklahoma City.
He's still the president of the Players Association.
Okay.
He's been someone who's represented the NBA well over his entire career, won gold medals for this country. I mean, yes, you do. You owe it to him. He is not in the stage of his career to be trying to do a rebuild.
It also feels a little like Andre Iguodala in Memphis. If you have a star player, an older player who is not wanting to embrace that role at this stage in his career, it's actually counterproductive to a young team that's trying to grow.
Move them out. Move them out real quick. But this is another reminder, guys. When you sign star players to max contracts and they aren't star players anymore, or they're not living up to that stature at this point in their career, you're in deep trouble in the league. It's the worst thing you can do. When you sign that deal and that player is not at that level anymore, you are in deep trouble. And that's how Houston and OKC found themselves. Because I'll take Russ any day over Chris Paul. But even Russ, when you look at that contract, it is going the wrong direction as far as his production is concerned. And that's the issue. That's why Who cares what happens with Chris Paul? I just
Hey,
don't. Wow. I don't think.
What about little Chris?
Good for him. He's got all. But Chris Paul put himself in this situation with that deal. It was, I'm coming here, and it was that wink, wink. Hey, I'm getting that max extension. Chris Paul is a nice player in the league at this point. He's going to the Hall of Fame. He's earned a lot of respect, and it's deserved. He is not close to the level of deal he's at for the next few years. And that's the reality of where his game is in the moment.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.